It's Sunday morning as I record this, April 13th, 2025. Happy weekend to you. I wanted to start with this. For those who don't know, this could be William Li with a YouTube channel. And if you haven't seen it, I wanted to kind of lead with this video. Only 136 views on it and only 168 subscribers for William Li. If this is in fact his YouTube channel, it kind of looks like it is. But I wanted to show this and kind of lead with the point that NIO is not a company, and William Li's style is not about hype. He's about actually creating value. And I believe this is going to show forth through the long term. But because he's reluctant to hype things, I remember, for example, in the recent earnings call where he was asked specifically about AI and the importance of AI, and he kind of downplayed it, but he also sort of, acknowledged that it's just part of what NIO does. And so I think that NIO is a sleeping giant in this area, along with tech, along with energy, along with things that in the future will be more obvious. But because he's not willing to just hype this stuff, for example, I remember an Nvidia earnings call not too long ago where I think they spoke in the opening comments and referenced AI about 50 times. And so, for me, that's like, okay, they're just trying to get that hype out there. At the same time, you've got Elon Musk, Mr. Overhype himself. I remember in an earnings call where he talked about how Optimus, everyone in the world would want two Optimus robots. And I'm just thinking, wow, it's amazing how hype sometimes masquerades as value. But anyway, I wanted to share that for those who hadn't seen it, and I'll link it in the description so you can check it out for yourselves. Also, let's now talk briefly about rumors. This is Li Bin talking about, or William Li, responding to the rumor that battery swap station was sold, or that they sold off that piece of the business. He says, don't believe in rumors or spread them. So let me clarify. I think that's William Li's YouTube channel, but if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to spread rumors. Also, let's talk more rumors. This is from Dong My Mind, which is why I decided to share it. But I'm going to tie it together with what I think is really important for NIO moving forward with deliveries. And I've seen this from other folks posting as well, but the idea that NIO is doing well with their sales volumes and with the requests or sales that are to come, we'll see in the coming weeks and months. Also, let's talk Onvo briefly. For me, this is important because here's an example of someone who wasn't really even thinking about the L60, maybe even, and I've seen this from others as well, that they weren't familiar with the brand. This is the first sub-brand NIO came out with, and it's a more affordable price range than, let's say, Tesla, which is where they're looking to compete. But the brand isn't yet known, which is also why I keep it at the bottom of the screen. The brand awareness, market awareness, it takes time, not just for NIO, but Onvo, and now with Firefly, that will also start delivery soon. This will be the most affordable brand from NIO. How about the deliveries? What can we expect? Well, this is from the recent annual SEC filing, and I wanted to highlight this because it looks like, as per what they share with the manufacturing and vehicle manufacturing, and by the way, I'll link this and everything else that I'm sharing here. This is from the top of the page. If you go 84 out of 746, that's where you can see this. And this is the vehicle manufacturing. We currently manufacture our vehicles at the F1 Factory 1 and F2 Factory 2 plants in Anhui, China. Our production capacity expansion strategy is aligned with our product pipeline development and sales projections. So in other words, when he was talking earlier, this is the way I take it. When he was talking earlier about how they maintain their goal of over, roughly a double of sales from last year, over 400,000, probably 440-ish being the goal, that aligns with them bringing this factory online and all of the products coming out with the new sub-brands, which are more affordable. Also, the refreshes or upgrades to the current NIO lineup. So now back to their final point here. In line with this strategic planning, our new Factory 3 F3 plant in Anhui province is expected to commence operations in the third quarter. What will we see until then? I don't know, but we'll be tracking it on the channel. And now let's look at the big picture. This is all passenger vehicle brands year to date. It is still very early in the year. The first quarter, usually the slow one in China with Chinese New Year. This is across the market. So I always have that asterisk in mind. But as far as NIO and its competition, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW all still selling over 100,000 gas or ICE vehicles. That means in the highest priced sub-segmented piece of the market for BEVs, there's still a tremendous amount of market to be taken. So when we come over and look at the BEVs, just the battery electric vehicle brands, and we see that NIO has over 27,000, and the only one of the 3 German brands to even rank in the top 20 is BMW with 17. You say, wow, or at least I'm thinking NIO is still very well positioned. Also, some of the companies that are emerging and doing more with their sales are ranked above NIO, but they're also partnered with NIO and will be coming out with battery swappable models. So that's also something to keep in mind. In the last couple of videos, I was tracking what I called the noise and the posturing back and forth between the US and China. And I'd said that one of the things I was watching was the posts. And what I saw was kind of interesting on Twitter, Twixter, as I like to call it, the platform that Elon Musk owns. I saw that the posts got to a point where they were actually at 1 million, and then they disappeared. And they were replaced with some Optimus post that only had about 13,000 views. And I have not seen it allowed or trending since. Maybe it's not being disallowed or kept from trending, but I just thought it was interesting to share some of these things and thoughts from others on what they're seeing and thinking. I want to hear from you, though, especially about this idea of 1 million posts and all of a sudden it's no longer trending, and hasn't since then, but lots of people are talking about this topic. I'm just curious. I like to sit back and monitor these things and kind of study, be attentive to things, and maybe note some details as I observe, and then see, what sort of manifests or shows itself along the way. So I do want to offer this as kind of a closing thought. One view that I've always had with William Li is recognizing that this is his company, it's his vision, it's his baby. He is extremely long-term. And here's an example. He's talked about 100,000 power swap stations in the future being, out and about in China, for example. They're not even to 5,000 yet. So a man with this big picture vision, who also doesn't hype in the short term, it just makes sense to me to recognize that the long term and the big picture is truly the way he's viewing things. And if I want to be aligned or invested in a company that he's running, I think it's important for me to recognize he has that big picture long-term view. Now, for me, I've kept it on the screen at the bottom above the ticker, and that's the 3 first major growth phases as I see them for NIO. And they're kind of my short-term time frame. And that gives me something other than just years to go by, for example. But with respect to the market awareness, even for NIO, that brand, I think, is still being learned about even within China, its home market. And then you've got Onvo, which is a new sub-brand, and some folks still haven't heard of it. Obviously, some aren't realizing that it comes from the NIO DNA. Then we've got Firefly, also a new sub-brand that's set to start deliveries very soon. And so how is this market awareness going to go, not just in China, but globally as well? I still think it's early in a lot of respects, when I'm thinking in those terms. For profitability, although William Li is very big picture long-term, he has talked about and reiterated, in fact, he said several times that it's really important for NIO to try and show profitability, or at least break even in the fourth quarter of this year. And then next year, full year 2026, he's hoping to see profits. So that is nice to know that he is such a big picture long-term guy. And yet he's recognizing, I think that's a nod to investors who have been and stayed with the company over these years, where the stock price has really been beaten down. Now, the battery as a service growth phase, that third kind of major growth phase, is what I wanted to see is what does everything look like after there have been 1 million cumulative NIO sales. And I think there are about 700,000. Now I came up with these before we even knew there were going to be sub brands. So I was only thinking in terms of the NIO brand. So with that, probably a couple more years before I'm even going to, take a look back and go, okay, how is this looking? Was this a complete miss for me? Was I on the money? Is it still early or earlier than I thought it would be? Well, what does everything look like? That's my take and my view. But I don't want to disregard. And I think a lot of people, at least from comments, it looks like people get frustrated with William Li in that he is very big picture long-term and he doesn't hype things. And that is certainly all of their opinion to have, whatever their opinion is. my belief has been it doesn't make sense to try and fight the way that this guy operates. I want to recognize the way he operates, include that in my thoughts and vision and goal, which is why, again, I came up with the three initial major growth phases so I could have a sense of, okay, let me see what everything looks like once these three are in. But that's just me, my take, my thoughts, and I probably talked more than I needed to. So thanks for sticking around to the end. If you did, have a great day. See y'all again very soon.